started. So for folks who are still joining, just feel free to put your name and organization in the chat just so we know who all is in the room. So welcome to the third and final webinar as a part of the Chicago Prize webinar series. So my name is Nneka Onwuzurike. I'm here supporting LIST Chicago and the Pritzker-Traubert Foundation. And I'm just going to do a bit of an overview of what we can expect for today right before I pass it off. So you should be able to see my screen. Okay, great. Just give me a second. Okay, so we've got an hour today. So we're going to spend the first 20 minutes doing a welcome and a Chicago Prize 2022 refresh of just the goals, overall objectives for you. I know many of you came to the first two sessions, so some of this should feel like a reminder. And then the Pritzker-Traubert team is going to do a website demo so everyone knows exactly how to navigate that. Then we'll take about 15 minutes to do a Q&A. So any questions that have come up for you today or over the course of the last 3 sessions, feel free to drop those in the chat and we will be tracking them throughout. And then we'll have time to do some Q&A. And then we're going to end with some complimentary resources for you all to know about. So we have some representatives here from the City of Chicago, from LIST Chicago, from Chicago Community Trust, and the We Rise Together team. So we'll be able to hear a bit of presentations on other resources that are available for you all to support the projects that you're working on. So without further ado, I will pass it off to Cindy.
Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. It's really exciting to watch you put your names and your associations in the box. Some I recognize, some I don't. We're really excited to have new people on board, as well as some of our old colleagues who, participated in Chicago Prize 2020 and are back, and we're really thrilled about that. I'm Cindy Moelis. I'm the president of the Pritzker-Traubert Foundation, and as many of you know, we invest in increasing economic opportunity through both inclusive workforce solutions and community investment. This is the last of the 3 webinars that LIST hosted in connection to the launch of the Chicago Prize 2022. And we just want to say thanks to you to the LIST team, especially Nneka. You've been amazing at hosting and moderating, so we really appreciate that work. I also want to take a minute to introduce you to the Pritzker-Traubert Foundation team, who are going to walk you through, and they'll be the people on the other end of any questions you have. Andy Beidman, Noemi Garcia, and Michelle Merritt are all part of our team. And I just want to say thank you to them. It's been a lot of work getting us up and going and opening up the portal today. So I just want everybody to know it's a new portal. It wasn't what we used 2 years ago. So please be kind. We're going to make sure everybody gets their applications in, but we just want to make sure that you let us know if you're struggling or having problems, because this is our new system. I also want to say thank you to all the partners who have agreed to join us. Michael Davidson, who's always a great colleague and a partner at the Community Trust. Tim Jeffries at the City Planning Department, who has been incredible in Invest Southwest. Kristen Wiggins from the We Rise Together, and Carolyn Goldstein from LISC, all really important partners with some, if you don't already know what resources are there, they're going to have great information for us. So I just want to take another moment to emphasize the Chicago Prize is about community and teamwork. I just introduced you to our team. We are asking you to go online and introduce us to your team, share your plans, tell us how they can positively impact your community, and how you would like to leverage our dollars to make your plans sustainable and feasible. So if you weren't part of Chicago Prize 2020, or if you were, it is the same criteria. It is team, it is leverage, it is impact, and it is feasibility. So I just want to emphasize that the importance of knowing that not everything has to be done. We just want your plan to get to feasibility. You don't have to have every dollar identified. You just have to let us know what you think it's going to cost and how you plan to get there if we're a partner and an investor. We appreciate that each community is unique and each plan may be in a different phase. So besides the $10 million grant, I think you've heard us say this, we're going to also provide an additional $5 million in planning and matching grants for people who may not get the $10 million. So thanks again for sharing your community vision and plans with us. Please consider applying to the Chicago Prize 2022. And we at Pritzker-Traubert truly appreciate the work that you do and the work required to apply. We understand that this is a lot of work to apply, and we truly appreciate the time you're taking. So I'm going to turn it over to Andy, Noemi, and Michelle to provide more details regarding the application. And I'm going to remind everybody that you should put your comments and questions in the chat.
Thank you, Cindy and Nick. It's nice to see everybody on the webinar here again today. I'm going to throw some slides up. As Nneka mentioned at the top of the call, we're really imagining our hour here today as a working session, an opportunity for you all to ask your questions, hear a little bit of review around where we're going with the Chicago Prize process, and hopefully get an opportunity to answer the questions you may have. So again, encourage you to use the chat, either generally or direct message Noemi, and we'll try and save as much time as we can to go through everyone's questions. On my part, what I'll do very quickly is just provide one quick last overview of Chicago Prize 2022. We'll then turn it over to Michelle Merritt, who's going to share some final advice from the diligence team perspective on how you should be thinking about your application. And then as Nneka mentioned, we have some time at the end to hear from some of the other resource providers that are in this space that we heard a little bit about on this last call. We thought would be useful to invite today to share a little bit more about their work. So Cindy hit on a lot of this, but let me quickly do just a quick refresh of Chicago Prize. So Chicago Prize is intended to be an open call for ideas from communities for how would you invest $10 million in the built environment to create economic opportunity and build wealth for your community. It is intentionally that wide open and that generic. Along the way, we are going to invest $10 million in a single initiative, as well as $5 million in planning and other capacity supports that we'll invest along the process. Our two other goals here are to lead a transparent process to advise and advance community-led projects. And we want to use this conversation, this platform that we are building around Chicago Prize, the network and community we're building around Chicago Prize, to continue to celebrate and promote all of the good work you all are doing across our city. One of the questions that we have received the most through this process, and I'm sure we'll hear some today, is what is Chicago Prize actually looking for? And the answer is, we want to hear from you around what your community's priorities are, what projects are essential for your neighborhood, why those projects make sense. Tell us what your ideas are for creating lasting economic opportunity in your community. There is no one-size-fits-all solution or secret key to what Chicago Prize is looking for. We are open to your ideas for how investments in the built environment can create meaningful change. That can come in the form of housing, commercial developments, other community assets. We heard it from Auburn Gresham on our first call around the suite of projects they brought together. We really are flexible and looking to hear from you on what your community needs. Initiatives should include at least one investment project, and so a project that's able to deploy resources in the first 2 years, and should present a theory of change. And I want to reinforce the importance of this theory of change piece. We are open to a lot of different projects and a lot of different strategies, but one of the things we'll really be listening for is understanding why the projects you're proposing are the right investments for your neighborhood in this moment. The third piece that I want to just reinforce here is we've talked a lot about community ownership strategies on previous webinars. We think community ownership and community wealth is a really exciting opportunity for some projects. We also realize that it may not be the right solution for all projects. And so we want to be clear that community ownership is not a requirement to submit a project to the Chicago Prize. Next, I just want to take a moment to reinforce our 4 criteria. While Chicago Prize is open to ideas in many different forms, and we're looking for community leaders like yourselves to tell us what you're working on, all the projects that come into the Chicago Prize will be evaluated against the same 4 criteria that you see here on your screen. Those are team, impact, feasibility, and leverage. And I'll walk through these each in a moment just to remind us how we are thinking about these pieces as we consider your projects. In terms of team, we're looking for teams that are led by people of color with experienced development expertise on board. The primary applicant needs to be a 501c3, and Noemi, when she walks us through the application portal in a moment, will show us how we indicate that in our submission. In terms of impact, your projects must be physically located in a South or West Side community, and we're looking for economic impact broadly through things like job creation, wealth building, or other strategies such as health and wellness, you name it. In terms of feasibility, this is an important point that Cindy made that I want to just reinforce here. We understand that development is incredibly complex, that these are living, breathing projects. And our expectation is not that at the time of submission, you have every I dotted and every T crossed. Instead, what we're looking for is projects that are able to demonstrate that they have a path to feasibility and sustainability, that includes an acknowledgement, understanding what the challenges may be and roadblocks teams may encounter as they move their projects forward. And we're looking for projects that are using our Chicago Prize resources primarily for project capital or a community wealth building strategy if that's part of the submission. And then finally, leverage. We think about leverage in the Chicago Prize context in two ways. First is leveraging our Chicago Prize award. So using our $10 million in flexible, no-cost capital to attract and bring in additional dollars to the project, but also leverage in a programmatic and contextual sense. How do the projects that you all are proposing for your neighborhoods build upon other investments, other projects that may be underway in your neighborhood? One quick reminder here on where we sit in this process. And so we are in our open call for applications now. Our portal is open as of this morning and will be open for 2 weeks. And Noemi will walk us through how to actually upload your proposal. We will then take the month of March to review your submissions, learn a little bit more about your work, and then host a round of interviews with each team that applies to really get to know your team and leadership. This is part of our commitment to equity and taking some pressure off of a written application, because we realize there's a lot more that we can learn about all of you through conversation than we can learn just through a written application. I'm gonna pause here before I sort of review the rest of the proposal or rest of the process and invite Michelle to join us and share a little bit about that interview process and any advice you would have for teams as they think about this next step of this journey.
Sure, thanks, Andy. Good afternoon to everyone joining today's webinar. As Andy mentioned, I'm Michelle Merritt, and I'm joining today on behalf of a team of diverse local and national experts that are led by Chicago Trend and RW Ventures. Our team worked closely with the Foundation on Chicago Prize 2020, and we're very eager to begin a new journey as Chicago Prize 2022 gets underway. We'll once again be helping to gather information, including undertaking the due diligence and evaluating LOIs and proposals in the first phase, and help to inform the broader evaluation team around the proposals selected to complete the second phase of the business planning phase. So before I turn it back over to Andy, I'd like to again just leave you with two quick takeaways. During the interview phase of the process, we're really looking forward to hearing more about your team's vision, your development plans, and ideas for transformative community-led impact. The interview time provides us with an opportunity to dig into the nuances. We want to hear the stories and narratives that sometimes get lost on paper. We're also going to provide some feedback to those that are selected to move on to the second phase. And the last thing that I would share is really share your big ideas. Don't hold back. We're eager to hear them. And beyond what we want to hear, most important is that our communities need them. So thank you, Andy. We look forward to meeting more of the teams as we move forward with this process.
Thank you, Michelle. So as Michelle mentioned, so the process will proceed as follows. So we'll do interviews in the months of March and April. And then this summer is when we'll begin our business planning phase. So in this phase, 5 to 10 teams will be advanced and invited to participate in the business planning phase of the process. You'll receive large planning awards and be asked to submit final business plans by the end of the summer. And our goal is to make our Chicago Prize Award by December of this year. One piece that I want to clarify here, we've had a lot of questions around the $5 million in project pipeline investments that we've set aside. The way that we're thinking about those resources are in two places. One is obviously planning grants that will go to those 5 to 10 teams that get invited into the business planning phase. And then the other place we're imagining making planning and capacity investments is at the end of this process. So teams that complete the business planning process but are not ultimately selected for the Chicago Prize $10 million award will be eligible for other types of grant and planning supports from that $5 million pool. And so I think hopefully that answers some questions that folks have had, and hopefully is encouragement for folks that have strong ideas and are thinking about applying to consider putting in their ideas. So that is an overview of the process. Please continue to put your questions into the chat. I want to turn now to where we're at in this process, which is our application. So Noemi in a moment is going to walk us through how to mechanically use our application portal. I want to remind folks around what our sort of core elements of our application are. And it's 5 different pieces. First is an organizational profile. So this will be the organizational profile for the lead 501c3 that you are naming as the lead for your proposal. Next, the next section of the application is an initiative narrative, where we want to hear about your overall vision, your goals, your theory of change, and we'll ask you for your budget for your overall effort. Third, we'll be asking for details for each of your projects. So Chicago Prize submissions can include 1 or more projects. For each of those projects, we'll be asking questions about where it's at, what you're hoping to build, what's the status of your project, and how you'll operate your investment over the long term. Fourth, we'll be asking about your team, wanting to hear who your leadership is, what roles they'll have, who's serving as the fiscal lead, and your team's overall strategy for DEI. And then fifth, we'll be asking for an introductory video to give us yet another opportunity to get to know you and your team. I'll reinforce here that those videos are not expected to be in any way professionally produced. You feel free to use your iPhone and record it at your desk, but that we have found in Chicago Prize 2020, the video was a really great way to get to know your team and hear more about your vision directly. And so that is the application at a high level. What I'd like to do now is turn over to Noemi, who's going to walk us through how to actually use the application portal.
Thank you, Andy. Can you hear me? All right, perfect. So I'll try to make this as painless as it can be. This is our application portal. So when you go to the link, which you can find at chicagoprize.org, you'll be taken to this screen to log in. All users will need to sign up under this new user registration. It'll pop up a form, ask you to create an account. Once you've created your account, you'll be taken to this home page. At the top, you'll see this orange ribbon asking you to please tell us more about your organization. This should be your first step. So when you click this link, you'll be taken to a screen, and on this right-hand side, you'll see this request and update button. You want to click that, enter your information for the lead organization, and then hit submit. After you've submitted that, you'll want to navigate to this home page. Click the apply button, and then you'll be taken to this landing page. So the organizational information that you've just entered will populate down here. You will not be able to edit that information once you've submitted it. You'll be able to navigate between the different sections on this left-hand side just by clicking on each section. You'll notice that the fields are required. So if you want to kind of go between sections, don't have all your information filled out yet, you can put some placeholder text into these fields to continue through the application. At the bottom, there's this attachment field where you can attach your budget summary. I want to strongly encourage you at every step of the way to click this save button at the bottom right-hand corner. It's not a save and next. So once you hit save, again, kind of go back to this left-hand side to navigate to the next section. Andy had mentioned that you can add your project details. You'll find on the project detail page, there's this add project button. Once you click it, a screen will pop up where you can enter in all of the relevant information. If you have an operating projections budget or site plans, you can include a Dropbox link here. It is not required for the projects at this phase, but it's an option if you want to share that information with us. You'll hit next. And then you'll see this little project tile pop up. As you continue to add projects to your application, you'll see additional tiles pop up. If you click this little triangle button in the corner, you'll have the option to edit or delete projects. You can edit or delete projects at any time prior to submitting your application. And then once you have made any sort of changes to your project details, click save, and it'll refresh your screen. So you'll see the changes then reflected on your project tiles. The team section operates in a very similar fashion. You can just continue to add team members, add their information, click save, and you'll see tiles appear right here. Andy mentioned including your video. You'll just pop that YouTube link right here, click save. And then I do want to flag, you'll see right next to application at the top, this additional details tab. Just ignore that. It has to do with the back end of Salesforce, which is the platform we're using. So don't worry about that. And then when you're ready to submit, we'll just kind of continue to this review and submit page and then click this button. We strongly encourage you to go back to the different sections and make sure that you've reviewed all of the information that you have entered. This is a new platform for us, so we are inevitably going to hit some errors and issues are going to pop up as you're navigating the application. If you do have any issues with any of the application fields, please feel free to email us at Chicago Prize or chicagoprize@ptfound.org, and we will get to your questions and hopefully help you navigate the application. So thank you in advance for your patience as we work through some of the issues. And we will make sure that your application gets submitted in time. No worries there. I think that wraps it up in terms of the application portal. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat.
Thank you, Noemi. I want to just mention two other pieces of the application portal. One is we have included throughout in the project initiative section templates that can be used for some of the budgets that we ask for. Those are options that are there if you want them and they make sense for your project. But applicants should not feel any pressure to use the templates that we provided there if they don't make sense or if you've got those materials assembled in another way. The second thing I just want to mention is if you visit our website, chicagoprize.org, on the same page where you'll find a link to this application portal, Noemi has put together a really helpful applicant guide that walks you through some of the steps that she just shared here today. Maybe we can put a link to that in the chat, Noemi, and also just has some tips for putting together your proposal. So with that, I think what we'd like to do is open it up for questions. And so I saw some folks have come into the chat. I think we've gotten some direct messages as well. Noemi, you want to get us started?
Sure, yeah. I'm seeing a question from Dimitri asking if we can attach any supporting documents other than a budget.
Yes, you may. So in the with respect to each project, there is room for you to include a Dropbox link or box link to any materials that you want to provide as additional context. You are not required to share more than what's asked for in the application, and in our review process, we'll focus primarily on the written application just as a matter of team capacity, but you're certainly able to attach additional materials there.
Great. I'm seeing a question from Angelica confirming that only non-for-profit business qualify for this grant.
That's right. The lead applicant needs to be a 501c3. That said, the larger team can include for-profits or other types of organizations, but ultimately the organization that's going to receive the grant needs to be a 501c3.
I have a question from Terry asking, does minority board leadership count for the minority-led applicant requirement?
It does. Again, one of the things that we're committed to in the Chicago Prize process is not having any, or avoiding as much as we can, sort of hard and fast rules or strict requirements around these sorts of dimensions, because we ultimately want to be able to respond to your team and what you're working on and how you've assembled your project. And so that would, in this case, that would certainly hit that requirement.
There's another question from Gail, piggybacking off the nonprofit question. She's asking, how long do you have to be a 501c3?
Why don't we, if you wouldn't mind, we'll follow up with you separately on that question.
Laura has a question. She's asking, can you share more information about what makes a project investment ready from our perspective?
Sure. So one of the pieces of the Chicago Prize design that we have tried to structure appropriately is a recognition that projects are constantly moving and are always in various states of readiness. And so this is another area where we have not put any hard and fast guidelines or requirements around what counts as investment ready. Beyond this, our goal is to have awarded our next Chicago Prize grant by the end of this year, and are hoping to have dispersed those funds in no more than 5 years afterwards. Investment ready means different things in different places, but what we are asking for is that at least one of those projects that's proposed through Chicago Prize is able to deploy a significant amount of those funds, particularly in the first 2 years. And so, just to clarify, we're hoping to spend the Chicago Prize award out in no more than 5, with most of those funds going out in the first 2 years. What that looks like in practice, and you know, at the edges of those timelines, we have some flexibility. But this is Chicago Prize is primarily not for ideation; it's for projects that have some road underneath them and are ready for a injection of capital.
Great. I apologize, I missed part of Terry's question. Part 2 was, does the project have to be a 10-year project?
No, not at all. And that's an important question. What we have said is we want to, again, deploy our Chicago Prize resources in no more than 5 years, but we understand that community change and community impact takes time. And so what we have committed to is we will support the recipient in evaluating and monitoring their impact over a 10-year time horizon. But the actual award should be dispersed in 5 years or less.
I'm seeing a couple questions asking if they will get a copy of this meeting. So I just want to say, yes, we're recording this and you should receive a copy from List after today's session. I have another question from Julia. She's asking, are there any hard rules regarding the fiscal agent fee?
No, we don't have any hard rules. Again, we are, for all submissions or all projects, we're going to come back to our 4 criteria. So leverage, impact, feasibility, and team. And so there's no hard distinction that we make between 5 or 10% or however many percentages are set aside for that fiscal agent fee, but we'll continue to come back to those 4 criteria in making our assessment.
Just got a question from Ryan. He's asking, are any costs outside of capital costs allowable in the Chicago Prize budget allocation?
The short answer is yes. So our goal is that the Chicago Prize fund should be used primarily for project capital, and that is a word that is intentionally somewhat vague. We want most of our resources to be used for the physical investment, but also recognize that there's a great deal of staff time and other resources that go into moving these types of projects forward, and that there may be additionally some support that's needed around programming or sort of operational elements once these projects are actually built. And so again, this is another area where we don't have any hard and fast rules. We want these resources to be used primarily for investment in the the project itself, either directly or through equity-like investments like we heard from Auburn Gresham. But what those numbers look like is ultimately, we're looking to hear from the teams on sort of how they're structuring their finances.
Sorry, I'm reading through Andrew's question. He's asking, is the team section of the application intended to detail all the team members for the whole initiative or the specific project for which the grant funds are being requested?
So it's a very good question. So in the team section, we are trying to get a sense of who your leadership is for the initiative overall. So we don't necessarily need to know everyone that is working on each of the individual projects, but want to know sort of who's the executive group of sorts that's running will be responsible for the overall vision and day-to-day of the initiative. I'll also just mention again here that the written application is the first part of our conversation. We're also going to have an interview that we'll do immediately afterwards, and so you'll have an opportunity to provide more detail then if there's more folks sort of around the table that you want to make sure that we're aware of.
Emily has a follow-up question to the team. Can you offer any guidance on composition and size of team? What is the difference between team and partners?
Sure. So I think when we look at the teams that are assembled for Chicago Prize, we're looking at a few factors. One is a leadership that is deeply embedded and credible with the community where the project will occur. That is sort of first principle for the Chicago Prize as we look for genuinely community-led initiatives. I think the second piece that we look at is community development, real estate development is incredibly complex, incredibly technical. And so we're also looking for expertise and experience on the team that has a track record or has a vision or a path to moving forward a large real estate project with at least a $10 million grant component. Those two pieces can and often are embedded in the same people. Sometimes they're not, but those are the two factors that we'll be looking at as we think about the team. In terms of the difference between team and partners, I don't think there's any material difference from our perspective. If we've hit with the end of the road for the moment with questions, maybe might suggest we turn it over to NECA to take us into our next piece. And then if folks have more questions, we've got time at the end of the agenda and we can come back to these. Let me just say one other word about this next portion of our agenda here. So the idea for this next session was we heard on our last call about a lot of great examples of really clever capital stacks. And I think each of the folks that's going to join us here in the moment were a part of that discussion. So we thought it would be interesting and helpful to have our partners and colleagues come and join us and share a little bit about their resources and the programs they are working on, and I'll let NECA take us into that piece of the agenda. I just want to clarify though, for the Chicago Prize portion, this is a informational session. There's no expectation that applicants to the Chicago Prize have engaged with our panelists or are working with them prior to their submission. This is a strictly informational portion of our conversation here today as part of Chicago Prize's commitment to continuing to support and advance projects across our city. So with that, let me turn it over to NECA and thank our panelists for joining us today.
Okay, so I'll just walk through who we have today and the order in which we'll hear the speaking. So each of them will speak for about 5 minutes about their programs. So first up, we'll have Mike Davidson, the Senior Director of Community Impact with the Chicago Community Trust, who will talk a little bit about the Trust PreDevelopment Fund. Caroline Goldstein, the Deputy Director of LIST Chicago. Then Kristen Wiggins, the Program Manager of We Rise Together. And then last but not least, Tim Jeffries, the Deputy Commissioner for the City of Chicago Department of Planning and Development. So I will pass it over to Mike to kick it off. And you have some slides to share as well.
Thank you, Neka. Good to see you. I'm really glad to be here. Let me share my screen. Can you see that, Neka?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Really good to be here. Mike Davidson with the Community Trust. I lead the Trust's neighborhood investment work. And we created just over a year ago a fund at the Community Trust that covers the cost of pre-development service providers. As you all know, pre-development is a difficult part of real estate development. There's lots of competing deadlines. There's just a lot going on during pre-development, and we thought a pre-development fund that pays for all the things that you need to do when you're building something during pre-development is a smart thing to do, in part because the communities were telling us they need these kinds of resources. So the purpose of the pre-development fund is grant funding for Black and Latinx community developers. Now that's public and private community developers to cover the costs of pre-development services for brick and mortar projects. Now this fund is for the pre-development phase only. This is no cost capital. That's a fancy way of saying grants. So this is not debt of any kind. These are for projects that might not otherwise secure capital. There's certain kinds of real estate development projects out there that are more inclined to get state and federal grants. And then there's certain projects that aren't. These projects are mostly for those kinds of projects, which tend to be sort of commercial type projects. Nonprofit and for-profit developers can secure these dollars. And like I've said, this is for real estate projects and businesses with a real estate need. This slide covers, I'm not going to go through all these, but these are all the things that you can pay for with dollars that you secure from the pre-development fund. So it goes from holding costs, which is that first bullet, down to third-party project management costs, fiscal sponsor fees, et cetera. So you need those architects, you need those attorneys, you have to have some environmental work done. These dollars can pay for that. We've been up and running for about a year and 4 months. We're pretty pleased with what we've gotten. We've funded 35 projects so far, and a fair number of those projects have gone on to secure much bigger dollars. And a few have even broken ground. We're really happy about that. So of those 35 projects, they have a total market value of almost $200 million. The average grant size from the pre-development fund is about $83,000. So this is really important. We cap these grants at $100,000, and there's a reason for that. We've learned from community developers, both private and nonprofit, that they can actually do a lot with $100,000. You use the pre-development dollars to get you to that next level that you need to get to in order to secure bigger dollars and hopefully some kind of construction loan. So the dollars, the projects that you see on the right-hand side of the screen, this is just a sampling of projects that we've supported. They run the gamut from mixed use. We're supporting a few Invest Southwest projects, transit-oriented development, some Chicago Prize projects from a few years ago, not the whole Chicago Prize projects, these are the finalists, but kind of discrete components of those projects that are large, projects that are small. We're not particular. The requirements, you have to be in pre-development. We do prioritize developers of color. We want you to leverage this grant for bigger dollars. This is important. Pre-development service providers of color. So who are the architects that you're hiring? Who are the lawyers that you're hiring? Who are the engineers that you're hiring? Real estate development is about more than the real estate developer. There's a whole sector involved in building a project. So we use the pre-development funds to build out the entire real estate development sector, not just the developers themselves. We do ask that you have a site identified, if not site control, that this has to be on kind of like Chicago Prize. You have to be on the ideation phase. This has to be kind of a business concept that's been sort of vetted and underway. Some other things listed there that I won't go through. On the right-hand side, some ineligible stuff. I'm not going to go through those because I know you're going to have this to review, and I want to get to our other colleagues. And then this is the final slide. So this is just a great summary. So Chicago Prize folks, if you're considering applying for the pre-development fund, these are just 4 questions that you should ask yourselves. Is the project viable? Is the financing just too uncertain, or is something underway? Does this align with what the community wants, and is it catalytic? And I realize that catalytic is somewhat subjective, and it's certainly contextual. Catalytic in a place like Pilsen is going to be different than catalytic in a place like South Shore. So, you know, feel free to contact Chris Egan. That's not me, that's my colleague. I've got his name, his title, and his email address there, and we'd be happy to answer any question that you have. And I'll stop sharing.
Mike, looks like there's one quick question. Is this solely for projects within the city of Chicago?
Cook County.
Great, thanks. All right, so Caroline, I think you're up next.
I'm just going to unmute myself here, and I'm going to share my screen too, but I'll talk as I'm getting that set up. First, I want to just introduce LISC, Local Initiative Support Corporation. But before I do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about LISC, but I also just want to introduce the concept of community development financial institutions, CDFIs, because there are others here in the Chicago market that hopefully, if you're not connected to, you might consider building a relationship with. There's LISC, there's IFF, there's the Chicago Community Loan Fund, there are CDFIs that work on small business access, like Allies for Community Business or Chicago Neighborhood Initiative. So it's a whole industry. CDFIs are entities that provide financing to individuals and community development projects that might otherwise lack access to traditional capital. And we get our funding through flexible financing that we take on from banks, from insurance companies, from financial institutions, healthcare providers, others that have an interest in supporting community development. And we make that capital available for projects. So specifically about LISC, Chicago, we're a CDFI. That's kind of the heart of what we do. We do a lot more than that, though. I know a lot of you on the call are already working with us, because our projects and the work that we do and the work that we support is really grounded in community vision, really grounded in projects that are supporting these catalytic efforts that are advancing a vision that neighborhoods and residents set for themselves. So that's the heart of what we do. So everything we do is in partnership with community. As I noted before, we pool public and private dollars to make those financing tools available to advance projects. Everything we do is with local partners, and we're guided by an interest in supporting people and places. Similar to what Mike was saying, we have a variety of capital tools that are available to help someone think through a project, finance their project, put the layers of financing that are together to help a project go forward. We do that through investments. We might strategically make some small grants to help advance a project. We do a lot of neighborhood planning that helps to identify and surface project ideas or targeted sites in a neighborhood to move forward on real estate development strategies. We provide a lot of capacity building and technical support. So oftentimes we're working with a project. Many of you are here in this meeting for years, helping to think through what the right use is for a particular site and how to build the capital and accumulate the capital to move that project forward. And then obviously helping to set the stage within the city and other markets to help advance community development. So we have a variety of lending products that can help people as you put your proposals together and you look at what your needs are for the projects that you're defining. We do pre-development lending, bridge financing, construction lending, more permanent financing, in addition to LISC having an affiliate called the National Equity Fund that does tax credit syndication. So basically what I'm saying is I think coming to a CDFI like LISC or others, if you're working with others, and putting your project in front of us and helping us figure out what tools we have that can help you advance. I think considering a CDFI really as your partner in building that capital stack. And, you know, hopefully that CDFI will have the right tool for financial tool to help advance your project. But if we're not the right entity for you, we're going to help you connect to a traditional financing source or to an equity source or a philanthropic source that might meet you at the stage that you're at. And, you know, I think another really important thing that we've talked about in earlier sessions is making sure that the real estate projects that you're putting forward are connected to community, connected to that community vision and advancing that community vision and serving the needs of residents and engaging residents in, you know, meaningful wealth building opportunities, that project is helping to advance the goals that the community has set for themselves. And so I think, you know, having those conversations early is always important. I think can really make a project's financing easier, but also just really help to achieve the goals of community development project if you're thinking about the community residents at the front end and how they might benefit and contribute to the project that you're planning. So again, really thrilled that we're working with many organizations that are going to be putting forward applications for the Chicago Prize, but also open to learning more about other projects that are in the works. So. I'm happy to answer any questions about LISC or CDFIs. Anyone has them now or later? And then I guess I will pass it to Christine.
Becca, did you want me to go next?
Yeah, go for it, Kristen. Thanks.
Wonderful. Hi, I'm Kristen Wiggins, and I'm the program manager for We Rise Together. Thanks so much, Caroline and Mike, for sharing your the resources you guys bring to the table. We Rise Together is an effort of the Chicago Community Trust in partnership with other philanthropy, business, and community to advance a more equitable economic recovery. We have a 3 to 5 year window in which we're working to bend the curve of this economic recession so that the recovery of Black and Brown communities can look more like their comparison communities of other races, and that the recession can hopefully be quicker and make less of an impact on the long-term financial health of families. And the way that we're doing that at We Rise Together is we're doing work in grant making, we're doing work in working with businesses and with community. But today I'm going to talk about the grant making work because I think that's what's most relevant to the resources that you guys are here listening to about today. We are making grants in 3 areas, and we think of them as concentric circles. The first is we're making grants for neighborhood anchor projects, so real estate projects similar to the components you may be putting together for the Chicago Prize. So we sort of think of that as the center of the circle. Then we're going to be supporting the businesses of color in those communities that surround those projects. And then we think about employment. What will it take to help a community in which a neighborhood anchor project is located really get back into the workforce? Today I'm going to talk, so to know that all 3 of those grant making strategies will be deployed over the 5 years, but today I'm going to talk mostly about the neighborhood anchor grants and how some of our grant making may complement what you're putting together for the prize. We have some primary criteria for neighborhood anchor grants. The first is that they be in a Black or Brown community somewhere in Cook County that's been historically disinvested in. The second is that there's been a high impact from COVID and the COVID recession. The third is that projects are community driven. So either they come out of the quality of life plan, they're consistent with the quality of life plan, they're led by a community developer, they're led by a community resident. There's a lot of different ways to look at that. And finally, that they have some catalytic potential, which by that we mean that they could create a ripple impact on their communities. We've so far done 2 rounds of grant making and funded 17 projects with an average grant size of around $750,000. And we'll plan, we have a current round that we're looking at right now, and we'll plan to do another later this year. I think the way to think about what we are working on and how it complements the kind of work that the Pritzker Traubert Foundation is working on is that we're looking for projects that are either close to the finish line and they have a gap left in their financing, or they're sort of mid-stage where you have a lot of your capital stacked together, but you need a little bit of momentum to get over, to really sort of get to the end. And so we're looking at projects that look like that. And I think that's what I mostly wanted to share. I hope that's helpful and useful. And as you work through your Chicago Prize, you know, we have been trying to share information back and forth between Chicago Prize and We Rise Together. So feel free to reach out to us as well over the course of the year if you think that you have a project that continues to be a fit for the work we do. Thanks.
Thanks, Kristen. And then last will be Tim Jeffries with the City of Chicago.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tim Jeffries. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of the Financial Incentives Division at the City of Chicago's Department of Planning. We oversee the use of most prominently and relevant for this discussion, TIF, for tax increment financing, the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, as well as the new Chicago Recovery Plan community development grants. And I'm just going to go ahead and do one thing real quick. Beneath me, you should see this link, hopefully, and this is our link to the Chicago Recovery Grants, and I'll just leave this up if people want the information for this as we move ahead. So I do have a presentation. I'll share it real quick. Okay, so I'm principally going to be talking about those three programs I mentioned, the Chicago Recovery Plan, the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, and Tax Increment Financing, or TIF. I would encourage everyone to not think about these programs as distinct entities and just think of them instead as the sort of green circle, which it's money. It's the development grants that he gives out. I'll go through some of the distinctions, but you know, I think for a lot of people, they get tripped up on what a program is and isn't. And really our focus at the city these days is you tell us your need and we'll tell you what we can do. And so that'll be evident in this, but let me just hit the key things for this. So CRP, NOF, and TIF, these are all city incentives that fund permanent building improvements. I'll describe what that is in a little bit more detail, but basically it's the capital, meaning building improvements and not operational expenses. These three programs are complementary to one another, but there are critical distinctions that sort of make one better or worse in certain situations. But as I said, it's really not important that you understand those distinctions. The city of Chicago knows these programs in and out, and we're encouraging people to just tell us what you need, and we'll tell you what we can do. And that's really my sort of go-to line now. Is like, just tell me your dream, and I'll tell you where we can slot in with that dream. Generally, how these funds can be used is they'll fund commercial, they'll fund industrial, they'll fund cultural or mixed use developments. We can do rehab, we can do new construction, we can help you acquire property, we can help you do site prep or remediation if the property is dirty. We can help you do soft costs, meaning architectural engineering, any of the things to get ready to actually construct. What we cannot fund with these programs is 100% residential projects. You know, we have a Department of Housing that has a ton of resources. If people are interested in those projects, I'm happy to connect you to those people. It's just these programs, it's not what they are right now. Also, furnishing fixtures or equipment, I always describe this as if you have a couple of friends in a truck, if you showed up to the property, what could you walk away with in half an hour? If anything has to be left there because it won't fit in the truck, is probably a permanent building improvement. It also can't help do minor repairs to help you get a property that you already own up to compliance if you're already in arrears of the building code. And as I said earlier, operating expenses or business expenses, it's just not really what these programs do. If you look at these programs side by side, you know, these are some of the sort of areas where they do and don't play. I'll hit on a couple of the most relevant ones at a high level, but again, you know, I think the point is, you know, this is not stuff that you need to really be getting into the nitty gritty on. But CRP, this is our newest one. It's available citywide. You can be in any location, any geography within the city, whereas NOF, you have to be in a NOF, the QIA is called the Qualified Investment Area. It's a very specific geography. It's principally on the south and west sides of the city, and a TIF district is a requirement for TIF. The funding sources for these vary, and so do how much money that each of these can provide. CRP is up to 5 million, NOF is up to 2.5. TIF functionally has no restriction, but except just the overall availability. But all of them also have these related maximum percentages, no more than 75% for NOF or CRP. TIF is usually around a 30 to 50% mark. Funding structure can also vary, meaning how we actually get the funds out the door. CRP and NOF are great and offer a bit more flexibility because will provide you a construction escrow, meaning you don't need to front fund the money and then get reimbursed on the back end or bridge your dollars, which frankly increases your costs. These two programs, the construction escrow is in response to a lot of interest in the community in providing more flexible funding. I'll just move on to this and just say, I think the most important thing that we encourage people to do now is just apply. Just apply for a program. In 2021, we created a new universal application. So there's one application for all three of these programs. The link right here has the CRP specific information, but the link is the same, whether it's for TIF, NOF, or the CRP. There's two parts. There's an actual PDF with an application that you fill out. There's also an Excel form that has a matrix and your sort of developmental information, including your budget and your overall need. Once you apply, we'll review it, we'll look at it, and we'll make a determination that, this project, this program, this source is really the best one for you, and that's how we want to proceed with it. We're accepting applications at all times, no matter what, no matter when, but we do have sort of punctuation marks throughout the year where we will look at everything we've got at that moment and then make a decision based on that, especially for CRP and NOF. One of those application periods is coming up on March 11th. So about 4 to 6 weeks from now. And then we have another one in the late summer, August 19th. So at any given point, no one is ever more than 6 months away from a decision on funding through our programs. And yeah, so and once you apply, you'll get feedback from us telling you how you can strengthen your application, how you can make it a little bit better, where you need to work on it and things like, and make you more ready to get our awards and our funds. Just in terms of application, I would just recommend that everyone just review some of the program requirements at a high level. Just make sure you're in the right geographic area. This is frankly less critical now with the CRP, which is citywide. As you go through the application, just make sure you're putting your best foot forward and giving the most clear picture of what your project is and what it is going to do, and how you're actually going to pull it off. A lot has to do with feasibility. I think what we heard from a lot of different sources today. It's there's a lot of competition these days. A lot of people have a lot of great ideas, and we're trying to grow the pie as much as possible, but funding is always in high demand. So I'll just put this link back up here if anyone's interested in these programs. If you have any questions, you can get a hold of me or my staff at any time if you email fid_intake@thecityofchicago.org.
Thanks, Tim. There's a question in the chat if you want to just answer it there. I know we're short on time, so I want to pass it back to Andy and Noemi to kind of close things out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you to our panelists and NECA and Carolyn from LISC. I think this has been a really helpful conversation for us. And I think from Chicago Prize's perspective, it is exciting to hear about all of the resources that are out there to leverage, and really just the tip of the iceberg. And so we are at time. And so Noemi just dropped in a link to how to access our materials into the chat. You can always reach us at chicagoprize@ptfound.org. You'll see lots of materials there for submitting your application, and you can reach out to us with any questions. I'll just conclude with a final encouragement to please submit your application if you think that this may be an opportunity that aligns. We are, as I mentioned, we have, in addition to our $10 million award, we have $5 million that we've set aside for planning and capacity grants. Kristen alluded to this. We are committed at the foundation to helping make referrals where it makes sense and helping move as many projects forward as we can. And so the first step of that journey is sharing your idea with us. And so Really appreciate folks' time today and the good questions and giving this opportunity a close look. Thank you to LISC for helping us organize these really great conversations, and thank you all for your time today. Please reach out at any time with questions. Again, we're at chicagoprize@ptfound.org. Enjoy your afternoons.